Hello guys, welcome to Ben 10 What Ifs. So in this video, we will see, what if Ben 10 awakened the Titan Omnitrix and got Harem of Helen, Gwen and Sunny? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Blank, blank, underscore, blank. Chapter 1. Awakening the Storm. Reality was screaming. Ben Tennyson had heard a lot of strange sounds in his 6 years wielding the Omnitrix, the death rattle of a dying star, the harmonic resonance of crystalline lifeforms, the subsonic rumble of a gourmand's digestive system, but he'd never heard anything quite like this. The null void, that gray purgato, Rye dimension serving as the universe's maximum security prison, was tearing itself apart with a sound like glass singing as it shattered. Magister Tennyson, the dimensional membrane is degrading at 17% per minute. The voice crackling through his comm belonged to Priest, a plumber technician whose species possessed 12 fingers and consequently loved anything involving complex calculations. At this rate, total collapse in 43 minutes. Ben didn't bother acknowledging the obvious. 43 minutes until this pocket dimension imploded, taking everything inside with and potentially ripping a hole in the fabric of reality that would make the null void breach look like a pinprick. He could do math. What he couldn't do, apparently, was stop it. Humungosaur's mass. Fist slammed another fragment of collapsing reality back into place, temporarily stabilizing a section of the dimensional wall. The gray wasteland around him flickered between states of existence. Solid ground became transparent. Gravity reversed at random. The crimson sky bled into colors that didn't exist in standard spacetime. Somewhere in this chaos, approximately 4,000 inmates were trying to escape. Another 200 plumber personnel were trying to stop them, and the dimension itself was trying to stop existing altogether. This is like plugging a dam with tissue paper, Ben muttered, his Vaxasaurian vocal cords making the frustration sound like a dinosaur's growl. Another section collapsed 300 meters to his left. He lunged, feeling the Omnitrix symbol on his chest pulse with familiar energy. Already thinking about what alien would work best. Jetray for speed. No. Needed power. Goop. Wrong kind of problem. The ground beneath his feet ceased being ground. For a moment, Ben experienced the peculiar sensation of standing on nothing while physics decided whether or not to notice. Then he was falling upward into a sky that was now below him, and the screaming of dying reality got louder. Okay, he said to no one in particular, slapping the Omnitrix symbol. Upgrade time. Green light erupted as Humungosaur's massive form compressed, reshaped, transformed. Jetray's aerodynamic body gave him control in the topsy-turvy gravity, neuroshock blasts already charging in his tail and eyes. He fired, not at enemies, but at the dimensional fabric itself, using precisely calibrated energy to cauterize the tears in reality. It bought him seconds, maybe a minute. Not enough. Ben. A new voice cut through the comm channel, sharp and fast and crackling with interference. Evacuating Section 7, but we've got a problem. The portal anchor is inside the collapsed zone. Helen. Of course she was here. Helen Wheels had a reputation for being wherever the Ion was fastest and the danger most immediate. As a human Kinesolaran hybrid, she experienced time slightly differently than baseline humans. Everything was slower, which made her perpetually impatient with how long everything took. It also made her an exceptional rescue operative, capable of reaching disaster zones before most people finished processing the emergency alert. Define problem, Ben said, banking hard to avoid a chunk of the null void's floating prison facility that had decided to occupy the same space where his head had been a moment before. The kind where if I don't get the NCHOR stabilized in about 90 seconds, the portal collapses and 200 people are stuck here when this whole dimension decides to stop existing. Helen's voice maintained its characteristic CL-ipped pace even while delivering catastrophic news. I can reach it, but I can't fix it and hold off the inmates trying to escape through it simultaneously. Ben's mind raced through options with the speed of long practice. Jetray could reach her position in 30 seconds, but he needed to keep stabilizing the dimensional walls or the collapse would accelerate. He could split into Ditto, but the clones wouldn't have enough individual strength. Echo could. No, Sound didn't propagate reliably when physics was having an existential crisis. Priest, can anyone else reach Section 7 anchor? Even as he asked, Ben knew the answer. Negative, Magister. All other teams are managing containment breaches or evacuation cordons. Agent Wheels is the only operative in that sector. Agent. They'd finally given Helen an official plumber designation 6 months ago, though she'd been doing the work for years. She'd celebrated by immediately taking the most dangerous assignments available, as if she had something to prove. Or maybe she just liked going fast into bad situations. With Helen, it was hard to tell. I'm on it, Ben said, firing another neuroshock blast at a dimensional tear that as spreading like a crack in a windshield. Helen, hold position. Incoming support in 20 seconds. I don't need. Helen started, but Ben was already moving. Jetray's form excelled at speed, but He needed something with more versatility. The Omnitrix responded to his mental command, green light flashing again mid-flight. XLR-8's sleeker form tore through the chaotic gravity, his kinesolaran phi. Psiology processing the constantly shifting environment with ease. To his accelerated perception, the dimensional collapse appeared almost graceful, reality peeling apart in slow layers, each fragment tumbling with ballistic precision. Beautiful, if you ignored the apocalyptic implications. Section 7 materialized ahead, or what remained of it. The portal anchor was a massive technological pillar, designed to maintain a stable gateway between the null void and real space. Now it listed at a 45-degree angle, half-phased into a dimensional rift, sparking with energies that made Ben's enhanced eyes water. Around it, maybe 30 inmates, various species, all desperate, were trying to force the malfunctioning portal open. And standing between them and escape was Helen. She'd always been fast. Ben knew that intellectually, had even raced her a few times over the years in an ongoing rivalry neither would acknowledge as friendly. But seeing her in action, really watching her work, was something else entirely. Helen moved like liquid lightning, her kinesolaran heritage expressing itself in midnight blue skin with circuit-like patterns that pulsed with bioluminescent energy when she pushed her speed. Right now, those patterns blazed like neon as she became a blur even to Ben's accelerated perception, striking pressure points and joints with precision that dropped inmates without causing permanent damage. She wasn't just fast, she was efficient, economical, every movement purposeful. No wasted energy. Took you long enough, Helen said as Ben skidded to a stop beside her, her Voic. Barely elevated despite having just disabled a Tetraman twice her size. Anchor's phase variance is increasing. We need to stabilize it in the next 60 seconds or the whole thing collapses into dimensional foam. Good to see you too, Ben replied, already assessing the anchor. His kinesolaran eyes could process information at incredible speed, but he didn't have the technical expertise in his current form. I need hands and tools. Not speed. Then change. I'll hold them. Helen dropped another inmate, this one a Vulpimancer who'd been trying to flank her. Though if you've got something that does both, that'd be great. Kind of busy. Fair point. Ben slapped the Omnitrix again, pulling up the mental catalog of available transformations. Brainstorm. Too fragile in this chaos. Upgrade. Maybe. But the anchor was already partially phased. Merging with it could be catastrophic. Jury rig. The gremlin form was a genius with technology, but Ben didn't trust the manic personality in a situation requiring precision rather than creative destruction. Feedback then. Energy absorption and manipulation, plus enough intelligence in that form to work complex technology. The transformation took less than a second. But in that second, 3 inmates rushed the anchor. Helen stopped them in a heartbeat, literally, targeted strikes to solar plexuses and nerve clusters that dropped them gasping. She didn't even look at Ben, trusting he'd handle his part. That trust shouldn't have felt as significant as it did. Feedback's antennae immediately began detecting the energy signatures radiating from the failing anchor. The device was trying to maintain a connection to 3 different dimensional coordinates simultaneously, the null void's native frequency, standard real space, and something else. Something that read as fundamentally wrong. Someone sabotaged this, Ben said, his conductoid vocal cords crackling with static. There's a third frequency piggybacking on the portal. That's what's causing the dimensional instability. Fantastic. Who? Helen disabled 2 more inmates, a pyronite and something crystalline Ben didn't recognize, without breaking stride. No idea, but if I can isolate and discharge the invasive frequency. Quote. Ben's antennae extended, making contact with the anchor. Energy flooded into him, familiar and controllable. He was a living circuit, capable of absorbing and redirecting vast amounts of power. The anchor's standard operational energy was easy, flowing into his cells like water. The third frequency felt like swallowing broken glass. Pain spiked through his nervous system as something fundamentally incompatible with standard physics tried to exist inside his body. The energy was cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature, and it twisted as it flowed, trying to corrupt the pathways it traveled through. Ben gritted his teeth and absorbed it anyway. Ben. Helen's voice held an edge he'd rarely heard from her, concern. Your color's wrong. You're supposed to glow blue. Not that. What is that? Purple-black. Occupied at the moment, Ben managed, forcing the invasive energy into his containment cells. Feedback's body was designed to hold and redirect energy. But this stuff was fighting him, trying to escape, trying to spread. It felt almost alive, almost malevolent. It felt like the energy wanted to unmake things. Well, get unoccupied faster. Helen's pace was increasing, her bioluminescent patterns blazing brighter. Dimensional stability is still dropping, and I count at least 40 more inmates heading this way. She was right. Ben could feel it. Even draining the sabotage frequency wasn't stopping the collapse, only slowing it. The dimensional membrane was still degrading, still screaming its death song into the void. The null void was still dying. And he was still just plugging holes. Not enough. Never enough. The anchor's stable, Ben announced, withdrawing his antennae as the Polar's energy signature normalized. The portal snapped back into proper alignment, its surface showing the plumber headquarters receiving bay instead of the chaotic static that had dominated it before. But the dimension is still collapsing. Fixing the anchor only stopped it from accelerating the problem. Helen appeared beside him, statue still for the first time since he'd arrived. To an outside observer, she'd simply materialized. Her top speed exceeded most species' ability to track visually. So we're still on a countdown to dimensional implosion. Approximately 38 minutes now. Ben looked at the portal, seeing P. Lumber personnel on the other side coordinating evacuation. We can get everyone out, but the collapse will still cause a shockwave when the null void implodes. Could destabilize the dimensional barriers across multiple sectors. How bad? Quote. Think of reality as a piece of fabric. We're about to cut a hole in it. The edges will fray. Ben's antennae twitched, still feeling the echo of that wrong energy in his cells. Could cause dimensional rifts across a dozen light-years. Millions of casualties. Helen was quiet for a moment, her patterns dimming to a low pulse. Around them, inmates were being systematically subdued and evacuated by plumber teams pouring through the now stable portal. Efficient, professional, by the book. Not fast enough to save everyone who'd die when the dimensional fabric started fraying. You've got a plan, Helen said finally. Not a question. The start of one, Ben admitted. The dimension is collapsing because something damaged its structural integrity at a fundamental level. That sabotage frequency I pulled from the anchor. I think it's being broadcast from somewhere in the null void, degrading the dimensional membrane. So we find the source and shut it down, while also keeping the dimension from imploding long enough to evacuate everyone and locate the source. Ben transformed back to human, needing his own brain for what came next. At 18, he'd grown into his frame, still lean, but with the kind of conditioning that came from years of combat and alien transformations that pushed his human body to its limits. His brown hair was longer now, perpetually messy in a way that suggested he had more important things to worry about than styling. I'll need to split focus, maintain the dimensional barriers while tracking the signal. So tag team it. Helen crossed her arms, her own athletic build evident in the plumber uniform she'd modified for increased mobility. You handle the barriers, I'll track the signal. I'm faster anyway. It's not about speed. Everything's about speed, Helen interrupted, a slight smirk crossing her angular features. You're just slow, so you don't notice. Despite everything, the apocalyptic countdown, the physics-breaking chaos, the lives at stake, Ben felt himself grin. Helen's competitive streak was legendary, and she'd never missed an opportunity to remind him that Kinisalarans were the fastest species in the galaxy. Well, almost never missed an opportunity. That smirk faltered slightly as she met his eyes, and for a moment, Ben saw something else beneath the bravado. Uncertainty, maybe, or recognition of just how bad their situation was. Then her patterns pulsed bright and the moment passed. Priest. Ben activated his comm. I need a transmission tracker calibrated to. He rattled off the frequency signature of the invasive energy, and uploaded to Agent Wheel's HUD. She's going to locate the broadcast source while I work on keeping this dimension from eating itself. Acknowledged, Magister. Tracker uploading now. Though I feel obligated to note that the probability of successfully stabilizing an entire dimension's structural integrity with a single operative is approximately bad. I know. Upload the tracker. Ben turned to Helen, who was already checking her heads-up display as the new data populated. Follow the signal, find the source, and shut it down. Smash it, disable it, throw it into a deeper dimensional layer. I don't care, just stop the broadcast. And you? Ben looked up at the red sky, watching it fragment into impossible colors. I'm going to hold reality together with my bare hands if I have to. Quote, dramatic. But Helen's smirk had returned, genuine this time. Try not to die. You still owe me a rematch from the last race. You mean the one you lost? I mean the one that got interrupted before I won. She blurred, already moving, her voice trailing behind her. Don't keep me waiting, Tennyson. Then she was gone, a streak of midnight blue and biolum. Evanescent circuitry racing across the fractured landscape. Ben allowed himself exactly 3 seconds to appreciate the view, the confident efficiency, the absolute fearlessness, the way she moved like tea. Universe had to catch up to her instead of the other way around. Then he lifted his wrist, studied the Omnitrix's glowing green interface, and started scrolling through options. He'd stabilized dimensional rifts before. Never an entire dimension, but the principle was the same. Find the structural weak points, reinforce them with energy, maintain the integrity until a permanent solution could be implemented. The problem was scale. The null void was huge, a pocket dimension spanning thousands of cubic miles. Reinforcing every weak point simultaneously would require enormous power, perfect distribution, and the ability to maintain it while the sabotage frequency actively worked against him. Echo could create enough clones to cover the area, but lacked the raw power. Way Big had the power but not the precision or coverage. Gravitac could manipulate dimensional physics but only in localized areas. He needed something new, some combination that didn't exist in the Omnitrix's standard catalog. As if responding to his thoughts, the Omnitrix flickered. Just for a moment, the green glow shifted, became something deeper. Emerald laced with gold and crackling white, like lightning frozen in crystal. Ben frowned, tapping the faceplate. Now's not the time for a malfunction, you glorified watch. The device pulsed again, and suddenly options appeared on the display that he'd never seen before. Not new aliens. He'd unlocked the full catalog years ago, knew every transformation available. These weren't new aliens. These were combinations, fusions. Homungosaur plus Gravitac equals Gravity Titan. Echo plus Feedback equals Resonance Array. Way Big plus NRG equals Stellar Colossus. The list went on, impossible combinations that shouldn't exist. The Omnitrix didn't work like that. One alien at a time, clean transformations, no mixing. Azimuth had been very clear about that. The DNA samples were kept separate to prevent contamination, to maintain the integrity of each species. Okay, Ben said slowly, staring at the impossible options. This is new. Another pulse, stronger this time. The Omnitrix felt warm against his wrist, almost alive. Through his 6 years wielding it, Ben had developed an instinctive connection to the device. Could feel its responses like extensions of his own intent. Right now, it felt eager. Like it had been waiting for this, preparing for something. Like it wanted to show him what it could really do. The dimension screamed again, louder. A massive section of the dimensional wall collapsed half a mile away, and through the gap Ben could see into the space dimensions, the crawling chaos where physics became suggestions and matter forgot how to exist. Decision time. He selected the first fusion option, Homungosaur plus Gravitac, and slammed his palm down on the Omnitrix core. Pain hit him first. Transformation always involved some discomfort as his human DNA restructured into alien forms, but he'd grown used to it over the years. This was different. This felt like being rewritten at a cellular level, like every atom in his body was being pulled apart and reassembled in a configuration that shouldn't exist. Green light exploded outward, but Threa, dead through with gold and white lightning. Ben tried to scream, but his vocal cords were already changing, reshaping, becoming something new. His perspective shifted upward as his body expanded to Humungosaur's massive size. But the weight was wrong. He felt simultaneously heavier and lighter, as if gravity couldn't decide how to affect him. Because he was controlling gravity now, he realized. Not just around him, but through him. Part of him. The transformation completed in seconds that felt like hours. When Ben opened his eyes, 6 of them now, arranged in a pattern that let him see in multiple dimensions simultaneously, the null void looked different. He could see the dimensional structure itself, the mathematical framework that maintained the pocket universe's existence. Every weak point glowed like cracks in a cosmic foundation, and there were hundreds of them. Thousands. Okay then, he said, his voice a harmonic blend of Humungosaur's deep rumble and Gravitax's gravitational resonance. Let's see what this body can do. He raised one massive hand, still possessing Humungosaur's raw strength but covered in Gravitax's gravitational core patterns, and pulled. The dimensional fabric responded. It was like conducting an orchestra made of reality itself. Ben could feel every weak point, every crack, every place where the membrane between dimensions was wearing thin. His new Orm let him touch them all simultaneously, weaving gravitational energy through the dimensional structure like thread through cloth. A section stabilized, then another, then a dozen at once as he got the feel for this impossible new power. Magister Tennyson. Priest's voice crackled with interference and what might have been awe. I'm reading massive gravitational fluctuations across the entire null void. Dimensional stability is improving. How are you? What transformation is that? Something new, Ben grunted, reinforcing a particularly massive crack that had been spreading toward the prison facility's main structure. How's the evacuation? 73% complete. At current rates, we'll have all personnel extracted in 18 minutes. 18 minutes. Ben could hold this for 18 minutes. Probably. The strain was already building. His new form was powerful, but he could feel the toll it was taking, not just physical exhaustion, but something deeper. Like the Fusio, N was burning through his energy reserves at an accelerated rate, consuming him from within to maintain this impossible combination. Sweat beaded on his transformed skin, immediately evaporating in the null void's strange atmosphere. 17 minutes to go. He could do this. A new voice cut through the comm channel, sharp with urgency. Ben found the source. Helen. She sounded out of breath. WH. It was remarkable given her kinesolaran endurance. Where? Ben asked, maintaining his gravitational weaving even as he divided his attention. 3 miles north of your position, buried in what looks like ancient ruins. Someone's been busy. There's a whole facility here, completely shielded from standard detection. The sound of combat filtered through, energy weapons discharging, structures collapsing. Also, it's heavily guarded. I count at least 20 hostiles, maybe more in the interior. Can you disable the broadcast? Not without getting past them first, and they've got some kind of barrier system. My speed's not helping. The barriers adapt, predict my movements. Frustration bled through Helen's usually controlled tone. I need backup. Ben looked at the dimensional structure as holding together through sheer force of will and gravitational manipulation. Releasing his control even for a moment would cause catastrophic collapse. But leaving Helen to face an unknown number of enemies alone was equally unacceptable. Can you hold position? He asked. Define. Hold. Don't die for the next 60 seconds. Probably. The sound of an explosion punctuated her response. Though I'm not making promises. Ben made a decision that was either brilliant or suicidal. Possibly both. Still maintaining his gravitational control over the dimensional structure with half his focus. Something that should have been impossible but somehow wasn't in this fused form. He activated the Omnitrix again. The device flickered, showing those impossible fusion options again. But now there was something else. A new category appearing in the display. Titan Protocol. Locked. Even as he noticed it, the words changed. Analyzing wielder capacity. Compatible. Situation assessment. Critical. Authorization level. Maximum threat response. Unlocking Titan protocol. The Omnitrix exploded with light. Not green this time. Not gold or white or any single color, but a cascading rainbow that seemed to contain shades that didn't exist in normal spacetime. The light wrapped around Ben's already transformed body, and he felt the device digging deeper, reaching into parts of his DNA he hadn't known existed. Pulling out potential he hadn't realized he possessed. And then the Omnitrix spoke. Not through his comm, not through external speakers, directly into his mind, in a voice that sounded like azimuth but somehow vaster, older. Weighted with cosmic significance. Wielder Ben Tennyson. The Omnitrix was designed as more than a transformation device. It is a key, a bridge, a weapon against extinction-level threats. You have proven yourself worthy of its true purpose. Initiating Titan Protocol. Warning. Transformation will integrate device with wielder's fundamental biology. Process cannot be reversed. Confirm acceptance. Ben had about half a second to process this before another section of dimensional wall collapsed, and through his multidimensional vision he saw the cascade effect beginning. This collapse would trigger others, which would trigger more, exponentially accelerating until the entire null void ate itself in approximately 4 minutes. Helen was still fighting alone at the source of the sabotage. Surrounded by enemies, 4,000 people were still evacuating through a portal that would collapse with the dimension. And the Omnitrix was offering him power he didn't understand, at a cost he couldn't fully comprehend, to solve a problem he couldn't fix any other way. Some choices weren't really choices at all. Do it, Ben said. The universe became pain. Every transformation he'd ever experienced was a gentle adjustment compared to this. The Omnitrix didn't just rewrite his current form, it rewrote him, fundamentally and permanently. He felt the device's energy spreading through his entire body, integrating with his DNA at the most basic level, becoming part of him in a way it had never been before. His human template, the baseline that he always returned to, was being altered, upgraded, evolved. The fusion form he'd been using exploded outward, growing larger. Homungosaur's strength multiplied exponentially. Gravitax's gravitational control expanded, from localized manipulation to cosmic scale influence. But that wasn't all. He could feel other aliens in the template now, their powers bleeding through, combining in impossible ways. Feedback's energy absorption and projection. Way-Big's titanic size and cosmic durability. Alien X's reality warping potential, raw and unfiltered. All of it merged into a single form that towered over the null void landscape like a living god. When Ben opened his eyes, dozens of them now, scattered across his body in patterns that let him perceive reality in its fundamental state, he saw the universe differently. Not just the 3 dimensions of space and one of time, but the underlying structure, the mathematical framework, the quantum probability fields that determined what was real and what was merely possible. He saw the dimensional collapse not as a disaster but as an equation. And he knew how to solve it. Ben raised his hands, massive, powerful, crackling with energies that made the space around them distort, and touched the dimensional fabric directly. Not with gravitational manipulation this time, but with something deeper. He reached into the fundamental forces that held the null void together and simply fixed them. Cracks sealed, weak points reinforced. The invasive frequency that had been degrading the structure was isolated, contained, and neutralized with a thought. The dimension stabilized instantly. Impossible. Priest whispered over the comm, his voice barely audible. The readings, dimensional integrity is at 97% and rising. It's regenerating. How? Ben didn't answer, couldn't answer, because speaking required conscious thought and most of his consciousness was currently distributed across multiple dimensions simultaneously, working to ensure the null void's complete restoration. But a small part of his awareness, the part that was still Ben Tennyson underneath all this cosmic power, remembered Helen. Still fighting, still surrounded, still in danger. That part of him moved. His Titan form crossed 3 miles in a single step, space compressing to accommodate his will. The facility Helen had found materialized before him, a complex of strange technology half buried in ruins that predated the null void's use as a prison. Barriers shimmered around it, the kind of shielding that could stop almost any attack. Ben walked through them like they were mist. The hostels Helen had mentioned. Armored figures carrying weapons that hummed with that same wrong frequency he'd absorbed from the portal anchor, turned as his shadow fell over them. They were humanoid but wrong somehow. Their movements too synchronized, their energy signatures reading as partially phased out of standard reality. Void Collective. The name appeared in his mind without knowing where it came from. Like the Titan Protocol had unlocked information along with power. They opened fire. Energy beams, plasma bolts, weapons that tried to delete matter at a quantum level, all of Chi washed over Ben's Titan form and accomplished exactly nothing. He flicked one massive hand almost gently. The shockwave flattened the entire facility. The hostels vanished, either vaporized or displaced into another dimension. Ben's current perception made it hard to distinguish, and he didn't particularly care which. The technology broadcasting the sabotage frequency crumpled, its exotic matter. Components unable to withstand the gravitational forces Ben compressed them with. Silence fell over the ruins. Ben. Helen's voice, small and uncertain in a way he'd never heard from her before. What are you? He turned, and the movement felt slow, ponderous. His Titan form was massive, easily 100 feet tall, composed of matter that seemed to shift between states, covered in glowing patterns that resembled circuit boards and star maps simultaneously. Multiple eyes focused on Helen's small figure crouched in the rubble, her midnight blue skin dusty, her bioluminescent patterns dim with exhaustion. She looked terrified of him. The realization hit harder than any attack he'd ever endured. Helen Wheels, who raced into danger zones for fun and challenged the universe to try keeping up with her, was afraid. Because of what he'd become. Ben tried to speak, to reassure her, to say something that would prove he was still himself under this cosmic horror show of a transformation. But his vocal cords weren't shaped for human speech anymore, and what emerged was a harmonic resonance that translated across dimensional barriers. It's still me, still Ben. I'm in control. Helen flinched at the volume, at the otherworldly quality of his voice, but she didn't run. Instead, she did something characteristically Helen. She stood up, brushed dust off her uniform, and glared at his towering form with her hands on her hips. You couldn't have done that 10 minutes ago. Before I spent all that time getting shot at. And despite the cosmic power flowing through his transformed body, despite perceiving 17 dimensions simultaneously and holding a pocket universe together with his mind, despite having become something that barely qualified as human anymore, Ben laughed. The Su-ND probably registered as some kind of gravitational wave, but the intent was there. He'd missed this, missed the normalcy of Helen's attitude, the refusal to be impressed or intimidated, the absolute confidence that she was the fastest thing in any room and everyone else should just accept it. Need to power down. This form is burning too hot. Already he could feel it, the Titan transform it. Ion was consuming energy at an unsustainable rate. Maintaining this level of cosmic power required fuel his human body wasn't designed to produce indefinitely. If he stayed like this much longer, he'd burn himself out completely. But changing back felt dangerous. The Omnitrix had said the integration was permanent, that he couldn't reverse what he'd done. Did that mean he was stuck like this? Who? NDRED foot cosmic entity unable to interact with normal reality. Helen seemed to sense his hesitation. You can change back, right? This isn't permanent. Don't know. Going to try. He focused on the Omnitrix, except it wasn't just on his wrist anymore, he realized. The device had spread throughout his body, its energy patterns integrated with his entire cellular structure. The glowing hourglass symbol appeared in dozens of places across his Titan form, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. Ben concentrated on his human form, visualizing it, demanding the Omnitrix return him to baseline. The transformation reversed in a cascade of light and pain. His towering body compressed, the excess mass converting to energy and radiating outward in waves that made the surrounding air shimmer. Multiple eyes merged back into two. The cosmic awareness contracted, condensing from 17 dimensions down to the standard 4. And then Ben Tennyson was human again, on his knees in the rubble, gasping for air. Mostly human, anyway. He could feel the difference immediately. His body was changed in ways both subtle and significant. Stronger, denser, his muscles containing more potential energy than should be possible for his frame. His senses were sharper, able to perceive spectrums of light and sound that had been invisible before. And the Omnitrix, while condensed back to its familiar watch-like form, felt different, more integrated. More responsive, like it had become a true part of him rather than just a device he wore. Helen appeared in front of him, moving at normal human speed for once. Her hand touched his shoulder carefully, like she wasn't sure he was safe to approach. "You okay?" "Define, okay," he managed, his voice hoarse. Speaking with human vocal cords felt restrictive. After the Titan form's multi-dimensional communication. What did I just do?" "You saved everyone." Again, Helen's hand remained on his shoulder, warm and grounding. "Though your method was new. And terrifying. Mostly terrifying. Sorry about that." "Don't be sorry. Be better at warning people before you turn into Cthulhu's bigger brother." But her tone was soft, lacking its usual competitive edge. "Come on. We need to get back to the portal before someone notices the Magister has gone missing." She helped him stand, and Ben became acutely aware of how close she was. Close enough to see the bioluminescent patterns in her skin shifting colors slightly, a kinesiolarian physiological response to elevated heart rate and emotional stimulus. Close enough to notice her eyes, the same M.I.D. night blue as her skin but flecked with lighter shades that caught the light. Close enough to realize she hadn't let go of his shoulder yet. "Helen." Later, she stepped back quickly, her professional mask sliding back into place. "Right now, we've got 4,000 people who just watched their Magister turn into a cosmic horror. You're going to need a hell of an after-action report." She was right, of course. The mission wasn't over just because the immediate crisis was resolved. There would be debriefings, medical evaluations, investigations into who had sabotaged the null void and why. But as they made their way back to the portal, Helen matching his pace instead of blurring ahead, staying close like she was guarding him or maybe just reassuring herself he was still real, Ben couldn't shake the memory of how she'd looked at him in those first moments after his transformation. Terrified, yes, but also awed, and something else, something that made those bioluminescent patterns in her skin pulse just a little brighter when she thought he wasn't looking. The Plumber headquarters medical facility smelled like antiseptic and ozone, a combination that always made Ben's nose itch. He sat on an examination table while 3 different species of doctors ran scans with devices that hummed, beeped, and occasionally made sounds like disappointed sighs. "Fascinating, Drive," Pax murmured, his Galvan intellect processing the data streaming across multiple holographic displays. "The Omnitrix integration has altered your baseline DNA significantly. Increased cellular density, enhanced neurological conductivity, improved regenerative capacity. You're still human, Magister Tennyson, but you've become a substantially optimized version. Is that going to cause problems?" Ben asked, watching one of the displays show his skeletal structure. His bones appeared denser than before, laced with some kind of energy that made them glow slightly on the scan. "That depends on your definition of problems. Medically speaking, you're healthier than any human I've examined. Practically speaking, Doctor." Pax gestured to another display showing Ben's energy signature. "You're now registering on scanners designed to detect cosmic-level threats. Every faction in the galaxy is going to know something changed during that null void incident." Perfect. Just what he needed. More attention. The Omnitrix pulsed on his wrist, and Ben looked down to find new data scrolling across its interface. Information about the Titan protocol, specifications he'd been too busy dying and being reborn to notice during the actual transformation. Titan protocol activated. Wielder template optimized. Fusion capability unlocked. Primal evolution access unlocked. Cosmic integration level 1 of 10. Warning. Power scal. Requires emotional anchor to prevent dissolution. That last line was new. Ben frowned, tapping it to expand the details. Titan transformations connect Wielder to fundamental cosmic forces. Prolonge. De-exposure risks loss of individual identity. Strong emotional connections to others provide necessary grounding. Recommended. Maintain close relationships. Isolation increases risk of existential dissolution. So the most powerful transformation the Omnitrix had ever given him came with a warning label that basically said, make friends or stop existing as an individual. Great. No pressure. Magister Tennyson. Dr. Pax's voice pulled him from his thoughts. We're finished with the preliminary scans. I'd like to keep you for observation, but Administrator Patelade is insisting on your presence at the Emergency Council session. Of course she was. The plumber administrator had a reputation for efficiency that bordered on ruthless. When she wanted you somewhere, you went there, medical concerns be damned. Tell her I'm on my way, Ben said, hopping off the examination table. His body felt good, better than good actually. No soreness from the transformation, no exhaustion from holding an entire dimension together. If anything, he felt energized, like he could run a marathon or fight 100 rounds without breaking a sweat. The optimized human thing wasn't just medical jargon. He saw LD feel the difference in every movement. The walk to the council chambers gave Ben time to notice other changes in how people reacted to him. Plumber personnel who normally greeted him casually now gave him wider berth. Their expressions mixing respect with something that looked like uncertainty. A few stopped to stare as he passed, not with recognition but with the kind of attention you'd give a potential threat. His energy signature, he realized. They could sense it, instinctively recognizing that something about him had fundamentally changed. The council chamber doors opened automatically, revealing a circular room with tiered seating surrounding a central platform. Magister Patelade stood at the platform's center, her Kaskin physiology giving her an imposing presence, 7 feet tall. With segmented armor plating and 4 arms, each currently holding different data tablets. Magister Tennyson, she greeted him, her voice harmonically resonant. Welcome. We have much to discuss. Around the chamber's upper tiers, Ben noticed several other figures. Some he recognized, senior plumbers, a few alien dignitaries, and some he didn't. But what caught his attention was the composition. Several of them were female representatives from various species, watching him with expressions that ranged from curiosity to calculating interest. The null void situation has been fully resolved, Patelade continued, pulling his attention back. Your actions prevented what our dimensional physicists estimate would have been a catastrophic cascade affecting 17 different sectors. Casualty estimates for such an event started in the millions. You saved countless lives. Just doing my job, Ben said, uncomfortable with the attention. A job that apparently required you to unlock a preview. USLY unknown function of the Omnitrix and transform into something our sensors classified as a cosmic tier entity. Patelade's compound eyes fixed on him intensely. I've received 3 separate communications from Galvan First Thinker Azimuth in the past hour. He's quite interested in discussing this Titan protocol with you personally. Ben resisted the urge to groan. A conversation with Azimuth meant at least 2 hours of being lectured about responsibility, while the brilliant Galvan simultaneously complained that Ben didn't appreciate the sophistication of his technology and expressed DGING pride that his creation had exceeded its original specifications. I'll contact him, Ben promised. You'll do more than that. Patelade gestured, and the chamber's holographic displays activated, showing star charts with various sectors highlighted. Your transformation was detected across vast distances. We've already received inquiries from the Hybrid, the Inkerscenes, the Lawota Coalition, and approximately 40 other governments and organizations. Everyone wants to know what happened in the null void. More specifically, they want to know what you've become. I'm the same person I was yesterday, Ben protested. Perhaps, but you're no longer the same level of power. One of the displays zoomed in on a particular sector. The political implications are substantial. You were already recognized as a magister and holder of the Omnitrix, significant status, but manageable within existing frameworks. Now you've demonstrated capabilities that put you in a category usually reserved for cosmic entities and civilization-ending threats. So what? I'm too powerful now. That's a problem. It's a complication, Patelade corrected. One we need to manage carefully. Which brings me to the primary purpose of this council session. She gestured to the observers in the upper tiers. Several factions have already proposed formal alliance arrangements. Some political, some military, some, she paused meaningfully, matrimonial. Ben blinked. I'm sorry, what? It's standard practice in many cultures, one of the observers said, rising from her seat. Ben recognized her as Ambassador Pixie from the Lawota Coalition. An individual of significant power forms bonds with representatives from various factions, ensuring mutual cooperation and political stability. You would call it marriage, though the specifics vary by culture. You're talking about political marriages, Ben said slowly, trying to process this. To me, several governments have expressed interest, yes. Pateladay's tone remained professionally neutral. You're under no obligation to accept, of course. But I wanted you aware of the situation before the proposals start arriving formally. This was insane. This morning he'd woken up planning to handle a routine prison facility inspection. Now he was apparently a cosmic tier entity fielding marriage proposals from alien governments. Before Ben could respond, the chamber doors opened again. A new figure entered, female, humanoid, with crystalline skin that refracted light into rainbow patterns. She moved with the kind of grace that suggested their extensive combat training or a species naturally optimized for movement. Apologies for the interruption, Administrator, the newcomer said, her voice carrying harmonics that suggested multiple tones layered together. I'm Ambassador Esther, representing the Kraho Collective. I arrived as quickly as possible after detecting the cosmic disturbance. Kraho. Ben knew of them, a species that lived on volcanic worlds. Their bodies adapted to extreme heat and pressure. Their skin was actually living crystal, formed from the minerals in their environment. Esther was beautiful in an otherworldly way, her crystalline form catching the chamber's light and scattering it in mesmerizing patterns. She was shorter than Ben, maybe 5'4", with features that were humanoid enough to read expressions but alien enough to be exotic. Her eyes, deep orange like cooling lava, fixed on him with unmistakable interest. Magister Tennyson, she said, approaching the platform. Your actions in the null void were detected by our planetary sensors. The energy signature you manifested matches ancient Kraho prophecies about star anchors, beings who stabilize reality itself. She bowed, a formal gesture that made her crystalline skin chime softly. My people would be honored to establish formal relations with you. That's nice. Ben managed, still processing everything. But I'm not looking for formal relations right now. I just want to understand what happened to me. Of course. Forgive my enthusiasm. Esther straightened, and her smile was warm despite her crystalline features. Perhaps we could speak more casually. I'm genuinely interested in understanding your experience. Kraho scholars have studied cosmic phenomena for millennia. I might be able to offer insight. Before Ben could respond, another voice cut through the chamber. How touching. The mighty Ben Tennyson, savior of reality, overwhelmed by little political attention. Everyone turned. Standing in the entrance, flanked by two massive guards, was someone Ben had really hoped he wouldn't see today. Adia, princess of the Inkersine Empire. She looked exactly as Ben remembered, emerald green skin, large dark eyes, athletic build that suggested she was as comfortable in combat as in a throne room. Her expression mixed arrogance with amusement, and she wore her royal regalia like armor. Princess Adia, Patelade said, her tone carefully neutral. We weren't expecting an Inkersine diplomatic presence. I go where I please, Administrator. Adia's gaze swept the chamber before locking onto Ben. Besides, when I rode that Ben had finally achieved his true potential, I knew I had to see for myself. She walked down to the platform, her guards remaining at attention by the door. Cosmic tier transformation. Very impressive. Very useful. Adia. Ben kept his voice level. What do you want? Right now. To make you an offer. She circled him slowly, evaluating. The Inkersine throne has been unstable lately. Factions maneuvering, rivals scheming, the usual political waste of time. But if I had a consort who commanded cosmic-level power, someone whose mere presence would make our enemies reconsider any aggressive plans. You want me to be your political accessory, Ben translated. I want you to be my partner, Adia corrected. In all things. Power, strategy, ruling the largest military force in this sector of the galaxy. She stopped in front of him, close enough that he could see the calculated intelligence in her eyes. We were always effective together, Ben. Imagine what we could accomplish if we made it official. We were never together, Ben pointed out. We had a couple of team-ups when our goals aligned and you weren't actively trying to conquer Earth. Details. Adia waved dismissively. The point is, you need allies at your new level of power. And I need someone strong enough to secure my position. We could both benefit. The chamber had gone very quiet, everyone watching, to see how Ben would respond to a marriage proposal from the Inkerseen princess. Patelade looked like she was ready to intervene diplomatically. Esther seemed curious, her crystalline features reflecting interest in the dynamic. Ambassador Pixie was taking notes. Ben took a breath, choosing his words carefully. Adia, I appreciate the offer. But I'm not interested in political marriages, arranged alliances, or being anyone's consort. I just want to figure out what happened to me and make sure it doesn't cause problems. Too late for that, Adia said, but she didn't sound offended. If anything, she seemed amused. You became a cosmic tier entity, Ben. You are the problem now. The question is whether you'll manage it intelligently or stumble through it like you do everything else. I muddle through, Ben said. It's kind of my thing. I know. It's almost charming. Adia stepped back, her expression shifting to something more serious. My offer stands, whenever you're ready to accept reality. In the meantime, watch yourself. You're not the only one who noticed that Titan transformation. And not everyone who's interested in you has benevolent intentions. She turned and left, her guards falling into step behind her. The chamber doors closed with a soft hiss. Well, Patelade said into the silence. That was enlightening. That was Adia being Adia, Ben corrected. Ambitious, calculating, and convinced she's the smartest person in any room. Often she is, Esther observed. Though I doubt she's the only one who'll make such proposals. Your new status makes you valuable. She met Ben's eyes. For what it's worth, Magister Tennyson, not all interest in you is purely political. Some of us are genuinely curious about who you are, not just what you can do. There was sincerity in her voice that made Ben reconsider his initial impression. Maybe not everyone approaching him was angling for political advantage. Maybe some were just interested in understanding the cosmic phenomenon he'd become. Or maybe they were better at hiding their agendas. I appreciate that, Ben said carefully. And I'm happy to talk, learn, understand all this better. But I need time to process what happened before I make any commitments to anyone about anything. Reasonable, Patelade agreed. I'm clearing your schedule for the next 48 hours. Use the time to rest, consult with Azimuth, and adjust to your new status. After that, we'll need to address the political situation more formally. The council session continued for another 20 minutes, mostly logistics out investigating the null void sabotage and tracking down any remaining void collective operatives. Ben provided his report mechanically, his mind still reeling from everything that had happened. Cosmic transformation, political marriage proposals, warnings about dissolution if he didn't maintain emotional connections. 6 hours ago, his biggest concern had been routine prison facility inspection. When the session finally ended, Ben escaped to one of the facility's observation decks, a quiet space with a view of Earth rotating slowly below the orbital platform. He needed air, or at least the illusion of it, and a moment alone to think. The door opened behind him 30 seconds later. Thought I might find you here. Ben turned to find Helen leaning against the doorframe, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing softly in the dim lighting. She'd changed out of her tactical gear into casual clothes, though her posture still suggested readiness for action. How'd the medical eval go? She asked, walking over to stand beside him at the viewport. I'm officially an optimized human with a cosmic energy signature, Ben said. Also, apparently I'm now politically valuable enough that people are proposing marriage alliances. Helen snorted. Yeah, I heard. Adia made sure everyone in the facility knew she'd made you an offer. Inkerseen Princess wants the cosmic hero as her consort. It's already spreading through the rumor mill. Great. Love being gossip. Could be worse. Could be true. Helen glanced at him sideways. You're not actually considering her offer, right? What? No. Definitely not. Ben looked at her curiously. Why would you think I would? I don't. But Adia's persuasive when she wants to be. And you do have that thing where you try to see the best in people even when they're obviously manipulating you. Helen's tone was light, but there was an edge to it. Just making sure you're staying smart. I'm always smart, Ben protested. You turned yourself into a cosm. I see horror without knowing if you could change back. That's the opposite of smart. It worked out. This time. Helen was quiet for a moment, her patterns dimming. You scared me today, when you transformed into that Titan thing. For a minute, I thought you were gone. That the power had burned away everything that made you Ben. But I came back, Ben said softly. You did. She looked up at him. And her expression was vulnerable in a way Helen rarely allowed. Try to keep doing that. Coming back, I mean. The universe needs Ben Tennyson, not some cosmic entity that used to be him. Her hand found his, fingers intertwining. The touch was warm, grounding, real. I'm still here, Ben promised. Still me, and I'm not going anywhere. Helen's bioluminescent patterns pulsed brighter, and she stepped closer. Close enough that Ben could feel her warmth, see the subtle variations in her midnight blue skin, notice how her eyes reflected the Earth's light through the viewport. Good, she said, because you still owe me that race. And I don't accept cosmic ascension as an excuse for backing out. Ben laughed, and the sound was purely human, purely himself. Wouldn't dream of it. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching Earth turn below them, their hands still intertwined. Whatever complications his transformation had created, whatever political machinations were already forming around his new status, whatever dangers the Void Collective and other threats represented, all of that could wait. Right now, Ben was just himself, standing with someone who saw him as Ben first and cosmic entity second. It felt like the grounding the Omnitrix had warned him he'd need. In the shadows of the observation deck, a figure materialized briefly, humanoid but composed of shifting void. Stuff that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. It watched Ben and Helen with eyes like holes in reality, then vanished as silently as it had appeared. Somewhere in the space between dimensions, a consciousness that predated galaxies made a note. The anchor has awakened. The game begins. Chapter 2. Convergence of Fire and Speed. 3 days of messages. 17 attempted calls. 0 responds. S from the greatest mind in 5 galaxies. Ben stared at his comm display showing yet another failed connection to Galvan Prime, resisting the urge to throw the device across his quarters. Azimuth, creator of the Omnitrix, first thinker of Galvan, and the single person who might actually explain what the Titan Protocol had done to him, was apparently too busy to answer. Or more likely, was ignoring him deliberately because that's what Azimuth did when he wanted to make a point about self-sufficiency. Your creation just integrated with my DNA at a fundamental level, Ben muttered at the blank screen. But sure, let it go to voicemail. Not like that's important. The Omnitrix pulsed on his wrist, almost sympathetically. Ben had been studying its new interface obsessively since the Null Void incident, trying to understand the changes. The fusion transformations were still available, along with something called primal evolution, that he hadn't dared test yet. And that warning about needing emotional anchors kept appearing whenever he accessed the Titan functions. His door chimed. Ben glanced at the chronometer. 0600 hours, barely dawn by Earth reckoning. Who the hell was visiting this early? Come in, he called, expecting maybe Rook or another plumber with some crisis that required immediate attention. Instead, Magister Patellidae filled the doorway, her Kaskin bulk making his quarters feel suddenly cramped. All 4 of her hands held different data tablets, and her compound eyes fixed on him with the expression that meant his day was about to get complicated. Magister Tennyson, I hope you're rested, because we have a situation. Why do I feel like I'm not going to like this situation? Because you're perceptive. Patellidae entered, the door sliding shut behind her. The Inkersine Empire has formally requested your presence at a diplomatic summit on Princess Adia's flagship today. Ben's stomach sank. Let me guess. I don't actually have a choice about attending. Technically, you do. Realistically, Patellidae set down 3 of her tablets, using her free hands to pull up holographic displays. The Inkersines are our largest military ally in this sector. Refusing a direct invitation from their princess would be interpreted as a diplomatic insult and potentially destabilize our alliance. So while you could decline, the political ramifications would be significant. So I have the choice between going or causing an interstellar incident. Precisely. Patellidae's tone suggested she didn't like the situation any more than he did. For what it's worth, I'll be accompanying you as plumber representative, along with a full security detail. And I've taken the liberty of arranging for Agent Wheels to serve as your personal escort." That made Ben look up sharply. "Helen? Why Helen specifically?" "Because she's fast enough to evacuate you if the situation becomes hostile, competent enough to handle herself in combat if necessary, and, according to THE reports from the Null Void incident, someone you work well with under pressure." Patelladay's expression was unreadable. "Also, the princess specifically requested that you bring whoever you trust most." Agent Wheels seemed the logical choice. Ben wondered how much Patelladay actually knew about what had happened between him and Helen on that observation deck. The hand-holding, the quiet moment, the way Helen's bioluminescent patterns had pulsed brighter when she stood close to him. Probably everything. Patelladay made it her business to know everything relevant to plumber operations, and B.N.'s personal connections definitely qualified as relevant given the Omnitrix's warnings about emotional anchors. "When do we leave?" he asked. "1 hour. I suggest you prepare yourself mentally for whatever game Adia is playing. She doesn't make moves without several layers of strategy behind them." After Patelladay left, Ben spent 45 minutes trying different combinations of his plumber dress uniform before giving up and going with the standard configuration. The uniform had been modified after his Titan transformation to accommodate his enhanced physiology, reinforced fabric that wouldn't tear if he suddenly needed to transform, integrated tech that could interface with the Omnitrix, subtle armor plating that looked decorative but could stop most energy weapons. He looked older in it, he realized. Studying himself in the mirror. 6 years of wielding the Omnitrix had already aged him beyond his 18 years in terms of experience and responsibility. The Titan protocol had just made it visible, his features sharper, his build more defined, his eyes carrying a weight that came from having touched cosmic forces and survived. Helen was waiting at the shuttle bay, leaning against the hull of a sleek plumber transport vessel. She'd opted for her tactical variant uniform, midnight blue to complement her natural skin tone, with custom modifications that allowed full range of motion for her speed-based combat style. Her bioluminescent patterns were currently set to a low, professional pulse. "Diplomatic mission to the Inkerseen flagship," she said as Ben approached. "When Patelladay briefed me, I thought she was joking. Since when do you do formal diplomacy?" "Since I became a cosmic tier entity that everyone wants to either ally with or neutralize," Ben replied. "Welcome to my new normal." "Your new normal is weird." But Helen's expression softened slightly. "You ready for this? Adia's going to push every advantage she can." "I know, but I'm not interested in whatever she's offering. So her leverage is limited." Helen made a noncommittal sound that suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. They boarded the transport along with Patelladay and a 6-person secure ITY detail, all species chosen for their diplomatic training as well as combat capability. The flight to the Inkerseen flagship's coordinates would take approximately 2 hours, enough time for Ben to review the briefing materials Patelladay provided. Except he couldn't focus on political treaties and alliance protocols. His attention kept drifting to Helen, sitting across from him in the passenger compartment, reviewing tactical data on her heads-up display. Every so often, her eyes would flick toward him, then away quickly when she noticed him looking. The bioluminescent patterns in her skin pulsed slightly faster during those moments. "Something on your mind?" Ben asked quietly, leaning forward so their conversation wouldn't carry to the others. Helen's display minimized. "Just thinking about what Adia said. That you're the problem now, and the question is whether you'll manage it intelligently or stumble through it." That's classic Adia. Turn everything into an insult while pretending to give advice. Maybe, but she wasn't entirely wrong. Helen's midnight blue eyes met his directly. "You've got cosmic level power now, Ben. That changes things. Changes how people see you, how they interact with you, what they want from you. I'm still the same person. Are you?" The question was gentle, not accusatory. "Because 3 days ago, you became something that scared me. Actually terrified me, and I don't scare easy. That changes things too." Ben wanted to argue, to insist nothing fundamental had changed. But the Omnitrix pulsed against his wrist, reminding him of the warnings about dissolution. About needing emotional anchors to maintain his identity in the face of cosmic forces. I'm trying to stay myself, he said finally. That's all I can promise. That I'll keep trying. Helen was quiet for several seconds. Then, moving faster than normal human perception could track, her hand found his and squeezed once before withdrawing. That's enough, she said. Just keep trying. The rest of the flight passed in professional silence, but Ben felt better. Grounded, like Helen's brief touch had reminded him of something important about staying human. The Inkerseen MP, Rhee's flagship conquest was exactly as subtle as its name suggested. The vessel dominated local space, a massive dreadnought stretching over 2 kilometers, bristling with enough weaponry to level a small planet. Its hull was the distinctive deep green of Inkerseen military technology, and every line of its design screamed aggressive capability. This wasn't a ship built for exploration or diplomacy. This was a weapon that happened to have life support. Cheerful, Helen muttered as their transport approached one of the Conquest's docking bays. Nothing says friendly diplomatic meeting like parking lots of guns pointed at your face. Quote, standard Inkerseen protocol, Patelade said, though her tone suggested she agreed with Helen's assessment. They believe overwhelming force prevents conflict. TS by making the costs of aggression obvious. They believe in intimidation, Ben corrected. Adia's father was the same way, everything was about projecting strength. The docking procedure was flawlessly efficient, which somehow made it more unsettling. Inkerseen soldiers lined the bay in perfect formation, their weapons held at parade rest but obviously ready. The lighting was harsh and green-tinted, casting everything in the color of their species' skin. Even the air smelled metallic and cold, filtered through systems optimized for Inkerseen biology rather than broader compatibility. N.O. Fasur approached, taller than most Inkerseens, his uniform marking him as high-ranking. Magister Tennyson, Administrator Patelade, Princess Adia welcomes you aboard the Conquest and requests your presence in the diplomatic suite. His large eyes focused on Ben with unsettling intensity. Immediately, of course, Patelade responded smoothly. Lead the way. They were escorted through the flagship's corridors. And Ben noted the strategic positioning of guard posts, the security checkpoints, the angles of fire that would make any combat scenario heavily favor the defenders. This entire ship was designed as a controlled environment where the Inkerseens held every advantage. Which meant Adia had deliberately chosen to meet here, where she controlled the terrain completely. The Diplomat IC suite was more palatial than Ben expected, high ceilings, ornate furnishings that somehow managed to look both expensive and militaristic, viewports showing the stars beyond. And in the center of it all, seated on something that was technically a chair but looked more like a throne, was Adia. She'd dressed for the occasion in formal royal regalia that emphasized both her status and her physique. The outfit was designed to project power, all sharp angles and precious metals, with just enough armor plating to suggest she was ready for combat at any moment. Her dark eyes tracked Ben as he entered, and her expression mixed calculation with genuine interest. Ben Tennyson, she said, her voice carrying the imperious tone she used for formal occasions. You actually came. I half expected you to decline and cause a diplomatic incident just to avoid spending time with me. I'm capable of being diplomatic when necessary, Ben replied, stopping at what he judged to be a respectful distance. Quote, though I'm curious why this meeting required the full formal treatment. We could have talked via comm. Where's the fun in that? Adia rose from her throne chair with fluid grace. Besides, some conversations require proper context. Speaking of which, her gaze shifted to Helen, Agent Wheels. The famous Kinesolaren hybrid. I've heard impressive things about your speed. I get around, Helen said, her tone deliberately casual in a way that probably irritated Adia's sense of protocol. Adia's lips quirked in what might have been amusement. I'm sure you do. Administrator Patelade, your security detail may wait outside. This conversation should be private. I don't think. Patelade started. That wasn't a request. Adia's voice hardened. We're on my ship, under my authority. You're here as a courtesy. But Ben is here because I invited him specifically. The security detail waits outside, or we end this meeting before it begins. Ben could see Patelade calculating, weighing diplomatic protocols against security concerns. Finally, she nodded curtly. Very well, but Agent Wheels stays with Magister Tennyson. Acceptable. Adia gestured dismissively. One bodyguard I can tolerate. The security detail filed out, leaving just Ben, Helen, Patelade, and Adia in the palatial suite. The doors sealed with a hiss that sounded ominously final. Now then, Adia said, "Cir. Cling Ben slowly like she had in the council chamber. Let's discuss why you're really here. You've become something unprecedented, Ben. A human wielding cosmic-level power, connected to forces that most species only theorize about. Do you have any idea how valuable that makes you?" "I'm not for sale," Ben said flatly. "Everything's for sale if the price is right. But I'm not trying to buy you." Adia stopped in front of him, close enough that he had to look down slightly to meet her eyes. "I'm offering partnership. Real partnership, not the subordinate arrangement most political marriages become. You barely know me. I know you better than you think. We've fought together, against each other, in situations where people's true natures show through." Adia's expression was serious now, lacking her usual smirk. "You're competent, stubborn, idealistic to the point of stupidity, and you have this annoying habit of making the right choice even when it costs you. Those qualities are rare, valuable, still not interested in a political marriage. Not even when the alternative might be war." Adia turned away, walking to one of the viewports. "The Inkersine Empire is powerful, Ben, but power creates enemies. Rivals who see my ascension to the throne as an opportunity to strike. Factions within the empire itself who question whether a female can rule effectively." Her voice carried bitter edges. "If I had a consort who commanded cosmic forces, someone whose mere presence would make aggression suicidal, those rivals would reconsider. Conflicts would be avoided. Lives would be saved." Ben exchanged a glance with Helen, who looked deeply skeptical. Patelade's expression was unreadable. "You're trying to sell this as altruistic," Ben said. "But really, you want to use my power to consolidate your political position." "Yes," Adia said simply, turning back to face him. "I'm being honest about it, which should count for something. I need you to secure my throne. You need allies at your new power level. We could both benefit. Or I could avoid getting entangled in Inkersine politics and find allies through less complicated means. Could you?" Adia's smile was sharp. "You're politically naive, Ben. You think friendship and good intentions are enough. But at cosmic tiers of power, everything becomes political whether you want it or not. Every ally you make threatens someone else. Every relationship becomes a potential alliance that shifts power balances." She walked closer again, and this time there was something almost vulnerable in her expression. "I'm offering you honesty," Adia said quietly. "No pretense of pure romance or idealistic partnership. Just practical recognition that we could help each other survive the political chaos your transformation created. Is that really worse than someone who'll pretend to love you while maneuvering for the same advantages?" It was a good argument, Ben had to admit. Adia's brutal honesty was almost refreshing compared to the careful diplomatic language everyone else used. And she had a point about the political complications being unavoidable. But there was still one fundamental problem. "I don't love you," Ben said. "And I'm not going to commit to someone just because it's politically convenient." "Love can develop," Adia countered. "We're compatible in the ways that matter, similar combat skills, complementary strategic thinking. Mutual respect despite our antagonism. That's a better foundation than most political marriages start with. Or it's a recipe for disaster when our goals inevitably conflict." Adia laughed, sharp and genuine. "There's the stubbornness I mentioned. Fine, you're not interested in my proposal today. But the offer remains open, and I think you'll find your options narrow. As other factions start making their moves." She gestured, and the doors unsealed. "You're free to go. Thank you for indulging me with an actual conversation, even if you're too idealistic to see the practical benefits." Ben started toward the exit, Helen and Patelade flanking him. But something made him pause at the doorway. "Adia," he said, looking back. "For what it's worth, I do respect you. You're brilliant, capable, and you've survived in environments that would break most people. But respect isn't enough for what you're asking." For just a moment, something flickered in Adia's expression, surprise, maybe. Or genuine emotion breaking through the political mask. Then her usual smirk returned. "We'll see," she said. "Idealism is charming until reality forces you to choose survival over sentiment. I'll be here when you make that choice." The trip back to the plumber transport should have been routine, retracing their steps through the Conquest's corridors, standard departure protocols, clean exit. Helen's instincts caught it first. Something's wrong, she said, her pace increasing subtly. The guard positions have shifted. 3 checkpoints we passed on entry are now unmanned. Ben's enhanced senses confirmed it. The ambient sounds were different, the air circulation pattern had changed, and there were no Incursine soldiers visible when there should have been constant patrols. Ambush, Patelade asked, 2 of her hands moving toward concealed weapons. Or extraction, Helen said. Either someone's attacking the flagship, or... The corridor ahead exploded, not literally. No fire or shrapnel. But space itself seemed to rupture, tearing open a dimensional rift that definitely shouldn't exist inside a heavily shielded military vessel. Through the tear, Ben glimpsed that same crawling void stuff he'd seen in the null void, the wrong energy that tried to unmake things. Void Collective, back, he shouted, but the rift was expanding fast, reaching toward them with tendrils of anti-reality that dissolved the corridor's structural integrity on contact. Helen blurred, grabbing both Ben and Patelade and accelerating to Kinesolaran speeds. The security detail was, "NT is lucky." 2 of them vanished into the expanding void before they could react, their screams cutting off with horrible finality as they ceased to exist. Docking bay. Helen's voice was strained with effort. Carrying 2 people at her top speed was pushing her limits. We need to reach the transport before. Another rift opened directly ahead, cutting off their escape route. Ben slammed his ND down on the Omnitrix without thinking, pulling up the first combat form that came to mind. Green light erupted as he transformed into Chromastone, his crystalline body able to absorb and redirect energy, including, hopefully, whatever the void rifts were made of. The transformation completed mid-stride, and Ben immediately planted himself between the rifts and his companions. Crystalline hands spread wide, he focused on the void energy, trying to absorb it like he would any other attack. It felt like trying to drink poison. The void energy was fundamentally wrong, antithetical to existence itself, and pulling it into his crystal matrix was agony. But it worked. The rifts, expansion slowed, their energies being drained into Ben's body faster than the Void Collective could pump it through. "Go," he shouted at Helen. "Get Patelade to the transport and get out of here. I'm not leaving you." "That's an order, Agent. Evacuate the administrator and alert Plumber headquarters that the Void Collective just attacked an Incursine flagship." Helen hesitated for exactly 1 second, her bioluminescent patterns blazing with conflicted emotions, then accelerated again, carrying Patelade toward an alternate route to the docking bay. Ben focused on the rifts, absorbing more void energy, feeling it corrupt his crystalline matrix. This wasn't sustainable. Chromastone's body was designed to process and redirect energy. But this stuff wasn't really energy in any conventional sense. It was absence, negation, the concept of non-existence given form. He needed a different approach. The Omnitrix pulsed, offering fusion options. Chromastone plus feedback for enhanced energy manipulation. No, that would just let him absorb more poison. Chromastone plus Gravitac to manipulate the dimensional fabric. Maybe, but the strain on his human template would be enormous. The void rifts pulsed, and through them emerged figures, the same humanoid forms he'd briefly glimpsed before destroying the null void facility. Up close, they were even more unsettling, their bodies composed of that light-absorbing void stuff, their eyes like holes punched through reality. "Anchor," one of them said, its voice like silence given sound. "You cannot prevent the unmaking. Existence is the aberration. We restore the natural state of void." "Yeah, I'm going to pass on the cosmic nihilism," Ben said, releasing the abs. Orbed void energy back at them in a concentrated beam. The Void Collective operatives scattered, moving with unnatural fluidity through 3-dimensional space as if they existed partially in other dimensions. The energy beam passed through where they'd been, accomplishing nothing. This wasn't working. Ben needed more power, more versatility, and he needed it without burning himself out the way the full Titan transformation had. Fusion it was. He selected Chromastone plus Big Chill, slamming the Omnitrix's core. The transformation was less agonizing than the full Titan form but still intense, his crystalline body restructured. Became partially intangible, capable of existing in multiple phases simultaneously. When it completed, Ben was something new, a being of living crystal that could phase between dimensions, manipulating both energy and the boundaries between realities. Perfect for fighting enemies that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Ben phased partially out of standard reality, matching the Void Collective operative's dimensional signature. Suddenly, he could see them clearly, not just their manifestations in normal space, but their true forms spread across multiple dimensional layers. And he could hit them. Crystalline fists that existed in 6 dimensions simultaneously struck one operative, disrupting its dimensional coherence. The void stuff collapsed, unable to maintain its structure when attacked on multiple planes at once. The operative dissolved with a sound like reality sighing in relief. The others reacted immediately, abandoning their attempt to expand the rifts and focusing entirely on Ben. Void energy attacks came from multiple angles, trying to unmake him the way they'd unmade the corridor's structure. But Ben's fused form could phase, could redirect energy, could exist partially outside their ability to target effectively. He flowed through their attacks like water, counterstruck with precision that came from Chromastone's energy manipulation and Big Chill's dimensional awareness. 2 more operatives dissolved, then a third. The remaining Void Collective members retreated through their rifts, which collapsed behind them. Within seconds, the corridor was empty except for Ben in his fused form and the structural damage from the brief battle. Alarms were blaring throughout the conquest now. Ben could hear Inkerseen soldiers mobilizing, responding to the attack. He transformed back to human. The fusion form was easier to maintain than full Titan mode, but still draining, and started running toward the docking bay. He found Helen there, standing guard at the transport's entrance, her bioluminescent patterns blazing combat bright. The moment she saw him, something in her posture relaxed fractionally. "You're alive," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "Hard to kill," Ben replied, boarding the transport. "We need to leave before Princess Adia decides you're responsible for the attack on her ship." Patelade emerged from the transport's cockpit. "I've already filed diplomatic protests and explained the situation, but the Inkerseens are agitated. We should depart immediately." The transport lifted off, exiting the Conquest's docking bay at speeds that pressed Ben into his seat. Through the viewports, he could see Inkerseen fighters deploying, searching for whatever had attacked their flagship. They wouldn't find anything. The Void Collective was too good at appearing and disappearing through dimensional rifts. "They were after you," Helen said once they'd cleared the Conquest's defensive perimeter. "The Void Collective specifically targeted you. Those rifts appeared on our route, not randomly." "I noticed," Ben said. "They called me Anchor again. Whatever their plan is, I'm apparently important to it. Important enough to attack you on an Inkerseen flagship," Patelade said grimly. "That's either desperate or confident. Possibly both." Ben's comm chimed with an incoming message. He checked he ID and felt his stomach sink. It was from Adia. Against his better judgment, he opened it. The holographic display showed Adia's face, and she looked furious. "Ben, I don't know if you orchestrate that attack as an escape plan or if someone's targeting you specifically, but either way, you've created a political disaster. My ship was breached, my soldiers were killed, and you were at the center of it. We need to talk, privately, and soon." The message ended before he could respond. "That went well," Helen said dryly. They returned to Plumber headquarters expecting immediate debriefing and investigation protocols. Instead, they found a message waiting from an unexpected source. The Kraho Collective was requesting Ben's presence on their homeworld. Immediately, for what they described as a matter of cosmic significance that cannot be delayed. "You're popular," Patelade observed, reviewing the formal invitation. "First the Inkerseens, now the Kraho. I'm starting to detect a pattern." "What do you know about the Kraho?" Ben asked. "Crystalline species that evolved on high-gravity volcanic worlds. Sophisticated culture with deep philosophical and scientific traditions. They were particularly interested in cosmological phenomena, spent millennia studying dimensional physics, quantum mechanics, the fundamental forces that structure reality." Patelade pulled up data on the Kraho homeworld. "They detected your Titan transformation and apparently it triggered something in their ancient predictive models. They're claiming you're what they call a star anchor, a being whose existence stabilizes reality itself." That matched what Esther had said in the council chamber. Ben remembered her, the crystalline ambassador with lava-orange eyes and that genuine curiosity that seemed less politically motivated than Adia's calculations. "Do I have to go?" he asked. "No, but refusing would insult one of the galaxy's foremost scientific communities, and we could benefit from our expertise in understanding your transformation." Patelade fixed him with her compound eyes. "Also, Ambassador Esther specifically requested you. Something about wanting to help you understand what you've become before the power consumes you." That was ominous and intriguing in equal measure. "I'll go," Ben decided. "But I'm bringing backup this time." "Helen, you interested in visiting a volcanic world?" "Depends. Is it going to get attacked by dimensional horror monsters?" "Probably." Helen's smile was sharp. "Then yeah, I'm in. Someone needs to keep you from getting yourself killed." The Aho homeworld of Pyro's IV orbited a binary star system, which explained why approaching it required shuttle shields rated for extreme radiation exposure. The planet itself was a study in beautiful still volcanic activity visible from orbit, crystalline formations that reflected the binary star's light in spectacular rainbow patterns, atmospheric pressure that would crush most carbon-based lifeforms. And heat. Incredible, overwhelming heat that made the shuttle's climate control work overtime. Atmospheric temperature at landing site is averaging 340 degrees Celsius, the pilot reported. Pressure is 4.2 times Earth standard. "Are you sure about this, Magister?" "The Kraho live here," Ben pointed out. "It can't be that bad. The Kraho are made of living crystal that forms in extreme heat and pressure. You're made of squishy human parts that cook at these temperatures." "Fair point. But the Omnitrix had solutions for that. Several of his alien forms could handle these conditions easily. And his enhanced human physiology might be more resistant than standard baseline." Only one way to find out. The shuttle landed at a designated diplomatic platform, a crystalline structure that looked grown rather than built. Rising from a lava flow like a flower of impossible geometry. Kraho waited to greet them, their bodies refracting the binary star's light into dazzling patterns. Esther stood at the front, and seeing her in her native environment was striking. On the plumber station, she'd been beautiful in an alien way. Here, surrounded by volcanic splendor and bathed in stellar light, she was radiant. "Magister Tennyson," she said as the shuttle's ramp descended. "Welcome to Pyro's IV. Please, there's no need to transform, we've prepared environmental accommodations for human physiology." She gestured, and Ben noticed the shimmer of a climate control field surrounding the landing platform. Stepping out of the shuttle, he expected crushing heat and pressure. Instead, the temperature was merely uncomfortably warm, maybe 40 degrees Celsius, tolerable for short periods. "Impressive technology," Ben said. "Ancient technology," Esther corrected. "We've been hosting visitors from LaS's robust species for thousands of years. Though I admit, we don't often receive guests of your particular significance." Helen had exited the shuttle behind Ben, and her kinesolaran physiology was NDLING the heat better. Her species evolved on a high-temperature world, so this was merely uncomfortable rather than dangerous. Still, her bioluminescent patterns had shifted to a deeper blue, probably a cooling response. "Agent Wheels," Esther greeted her. "I'm pleased you could accompany Magister Tennyson. Kinesolarans are always welcome on Kraho worlds. We admire your species' adaptation to extreme velocities." "Thanks," Helen said, her tone carefully neutral. "Nice planet. Very volcanic." "We think so." Esther's smile suggested she'd caught Helen's diplomatic understatement. "Please, follow me. The Council of Thermal Elders is eager to meet you, Ben. And after that, if you're willing, I'd like to show you our crystalline gardens. They're particularly beautiful during binary sunset." He walked through the Kraho city was unlike anything Ben had experienced. The structures weren't built so much as cultivated. Crystalline formations encouraged to grow in specific patterns, creating architecture that blended seamlessly with the volcanic landscape. Lava flows were integrated into the city's design, providing heat and light, their movement controlled through channels of heat-resistant crystal. And everywhere, Kraho moved through their native environment, walking across surfaces that glowed red-hot, bathing in lava pools, their crystalline bodies absorbing thermal energy like plants absorbing sunlight. "We're a geothermal species," Esther explained, noticing Ben's fascination. Heat isn't just comfortable for us, it's necessary for survival. Our bodies are constantly absorbing thermal energy, using it to maintain our crystalline structure. Without sufficient heat, we become brittle, fragile. What happens if you get too cold? Helen asked. We shatter. Esther's tone was matter of fact. Our species' greatest fear is the cold. It's why we rarely leave volcanic worlds, why our culture is built around thermal maintenance, why. She trailed off, looking troubled. Why what? Ben prompted gently. Why we're dying, Esther said quietly. Our planet's core is cooling. Slowly. The process will take thousands of years, but inevitably. We've tried everything to reverse it. Thermal engineering, artificial heat generation, even attempting to reignite deeper mantle convection. Nothing works. Eventually, Pyro's IV will cool beyond our ability to survive here, and we'll have to leave the world our species evolved on. The grief in her voice was palpable. Ben realized this wasn't just geological trivia, this was her entire civilization facing eventual extinction of their way of life. That's why you're interested in me, he said, understanding clicking into place. You detected my Titan transformation, the cosmic energy involved. You think I might be able to help with your planetary crisis. Esther stopped walking, turning to face him fully. Yes, our ancient texts speak of star anchors, beings who can touch fundamental forces and shape them. When we detected your energy, Y signature during the null void incident, it matched the theoretical patterns described in those texts perfectly. Her lava-orange eyes held desperate hope. If you could access that cosmic power again, if you could channel it into our planet's core, you might be able to reverse the cooling. Save our world. Ben exchanged glances with Helen, who looked skeptical. That's a big ask, Helen said. Quote, you're talking about planetary scale engineering using powers he barely understands. What if something goes wrong? Then we're no worse off than we already are, Esther replied. We're dying slowly. If Ben's attempt fails, it merely makes the inevitable happen faster. But if it succeeds, her voice carried fierce longing. If it succeeds, my people survive. Our culture continues. The world we love remains our home. It was emotional blackmail of the gentlest kind, not demanding or manipulative, just honest about the stakes. And it worked, because Ben could feel himself wanting to help despite the risks. Let me meet with your council first, he said. Understand what you're asking technically. Then I'll decide if it's possible. Gratitude flooded Esther's expression. Thank you. That's all I ask, that you consider it. The Council of Thermal Elders occupied a chamber at the city's heart, where the lava flows converged into a massive pool that served as both heat source and symbolic center. 12 Kraho elders sat on crystalline thrones arranged around the pool, their bodies showing the facets and clarity that came with age. Apparently, Kraho grew more transparent and geometrically perfect as they matured. The eldest, whose body was so clear he was nearly invisible except for the light refracting through his structure, spoke first. Ben Tennyson, wielder of the Omnitrix, the one our ancestors called Star Anchor, in prophecies recorded 10,000 years ago. Welcome to Pyro's IV. You're saying your ancestors predicted me specifically? Ben asked. 10,000 years ago, not you personally, your role, your function. The elder's voice resonated like struck crystal. They foresaw beings who would emerge at critical moments in cosmic history, individuals whose existence would stabilize reality during periods of fundamental instability. They believed such beings could manipulate the forces that shape worlds, stars, even time itself. That's a lot of pressure for an 18-year-old human. You're no longer merely human, another elder observed. We can see the cosmic resonance in your energy pattern. You've touched forces beyond normal existence and integrated them into your being. The question is whether you understand what you've become. Not really, Ben admitted. My transformation activated during a crisis. I used the power instinctively, then Ed back before I could fully explore what it did to me. Then allow us to help you understand. The eldest elder gestured, and the lava pool's surface became a display screen, showing patterns of RGY and mathematical equations that made Ben's head hurt. The universe operates on fundamental forces, gravity, electromagnetism, the nuclear forces, and deeper principles we're still discovering. The Titan protocol you activated doesn't just let you transform into aliens. It lets you manipulate those fundamental forces directly. The display shifted, showing what looked like Ben's energy signature overlaid with cosmic force patterns. You've become a living conduit for universal energies. That's what makes you a star anchor. Your existence creates a stabilizing effect on reality itself, previous ending the kind of dimensional collapse you witnessed in the null void. And you want me to use that to reignite your planet's core, Ben said. We hope you might be willing to try. Not now. You're CL. Early, still learning to control these abilities. But eventually, when you've mastered the Titan transformations, you might be capable of planetary scale manipulation. Helen stepped forward. What's in it for him? You're asking for a massive favor that could take years to fulfill. What are the Kraho offering in return? The elders were quiet for a moment. Then the eldest spoke again. Knowledge. We'll teach you everything we've learned about cosmic forces, dimensional physics, the fundamental principles that govern reality. We'll help you master the Titan protocol safely, without the risk of dissolution that currently threatens you. That got Ben's attention. You know about the dissolution risk. It's inherent to beings who touch cosmic forces. The more power you channel, the more your individual identity risks being subsumed into the universal energies. You need anchors, strong emotional connections to other individuals, concrete ties to personal identity, reasons to remain yourself, rather than dissipating into pure cosmic awareness. The same warning the Omnitrix had given him, but with more context. Ben felt something cold settle in his stomach, the realization that his transformation came with an existential threat. A risk that he might literally stop being Ben Tennyson if he used the Titan powers too much without the right safeguards. How do I create those anchors? He asked. Through bonds, relationships, connections that matter enough to ground your identity even when you're channeling forces that transcend individual existence. The eldest elder's transparent form shifted, light refracting through him in complex patterns. Love is the strongest anchor. Not merely romantic love, though that serves, but deep connection to others who remind you of who you are beyond the cosmic power. Helen's hand found Ben's shoulder, her touch warm and grounding. He's got connections, she said firmly. He's not alone in this. The elders seemed pleased by that. Then you have a foundation to build on. The question remains, will you help us, Ben Tennyson? Not today, but eventually, when you've mastered your abilities. Ben looked at Esther, who watched him with barely concealed hope. He thought about an entire civilization facing slow extinction, about the power he'd touched in the null void that might be capable of solving their crisis. I'll try, he said. I can't promise success, but I'll try to help once I understand the Titan protocol better. The relief in the chamber was palpable. Esther's crystalline features showed emotion more clearly than he'd seen from any Kraho: joy, gratitude, hope, all refracting through her transparent skin. Thank you, she said quietly. Thank you. After the formal council meeting ended, Esther led Ben and Helen to what she see. All the crystalline gardens, formations that had been cultivated over centuries into impossible geometric beauty. Crystal structures grew in fractal patterns, each surface catching and refracting the binary stars' light into cascading rainbows. The climate control field extended here too, making the temperature merely uncomfortably warm rather than lethal. Esther walked among the crystal formations with obvious affection, occasionally touching them and causing harmonic resonances that sounded like music. I used to come here as a child, she said. Before I joined the diplomatic corps, before I understood that our world was dying. I'd spend hours just watching the light patterns change as the stars moved across the sky. It's beautiful, Ben said honestly. The garden was alien but stunning. Each crystalline formation a unique work of natural art. It won't last, Esther said softly. As the core cools, these formations will stop growing. Eventually, they'll become brittle and shatter. Everything we've built here will crumble with the cooling. Helen had wandered slightly ahead, examining a particularly complex fractal structure. How long do you have? She called back. Centuries. Maybe a millennium if we're fortunate. But that's nothing in geological time, nothing compared to the millions of years Kraho civilization has existed here. Esther sat on a crystalline bench that grew from the ground, gesturing for Ben to join her. I'm sorry. This was supposed to be a pleasant tour, and I'm being melancholy. You're being honest, Ben said, sitting beside her. The crystal was warm beneath him, heated by the volcanic activity below. I appreciate that more than diplomatic pleasantries. Esther smiled, her features catching the binary star's light in ways that made her seem to glow from within. That's why I wanted to talk with you specifically. You have a reputation for honesty, for seeing people as individuals rather than political assets. It's rare, especially among those with significant power. I try. Doesn't always work out, but you try. That matters. Esther was quiet for a moment, her lava-orange eyes distant. Can I confess something? The council asked me to invite you here, to make the formal request about our planetary crisis. But I wanted you to come for personal reasons too. Oh, Ben kept his tone neutral, but his enhanced senses picked up the shift. Tea in her body language, nervous energy despite her crystalline stillness. Your transformation fascinated me, not just as a scientific phenomenon, though it's certainly that, but as a moment of pure courage. Esther looked at him directly now. You were facing impossible odds, and instead of accepting failure, you pushed beyond every limit and became something new. That's inspiring, attractive. Oh, that was a confession of interest. Delivered with Kraho directness. Ben became acutely aware of how close they were sitting, of the way Esther's crystalline skin caught the light, of the genuine emotion in her expression. She wasn't playing political games like Adia. This was sincere. Esther, he started carefully, I'm flattered. Really, but I barely know you, and you barely know me. We've had one conversation before today. I know. I'm not asking for commitment or even a clear answer about your feelings. I just wanted you to know that my interest isn't purely about what you can do for my planet. Her smile was self-deprecating. Though I admit, the two are difficult to fully separate. You fascinate me personally, and you might be capable of saving my world. Both things are true. He honesty was refreshing and complicated simultaneously. Ben appreciated her directness, but it added another layer to an already complex situation. Adia wanted a political alliance. Esther wanted, what? Personal connection mixed with hope for her civilization's survival. I need time, Ben said finally. Time to understand what I've become, to figure out how to manage these powers without losing myself. Adding romantic complications right now seems like a bad idea. That's reasonable, Esther agreed. But you should know, Kraho culture views relationships differently than human culture. We don't practice monogamy as a default. Our species' social structure is built around thermal families, groups of individuals who share heat sources and emotional bonds. Multiple partnerships are normal for us. That was relevant information. And suddenly, Ben understood why she'd mentioned it. You're saying you wouldn't have a problem if I had connections with multiple people. I'm saying that in Kraho culture, having multiple strong emotional bonds is considered healthy, necessary, even, for psychological stability. Esther's expression was knowing, and according to your Omnitrix's warnings about dissolution, you need multiple emotional anchors to maintain your individual identity when using cosmic powers. One person might not be sufficient. She'd essentially just given him cultural permission to pursue multiple relationships while also pointing out that his survival might depend on it. Ben wasn't sure if that was thoughtful or strategic. Probably both. I'll think about it, he said. All of it. The planetary crisis, the personal interest, the cultural differences. I just need time to process. Of course. Esther stood, offering her hand to help him up. Her crystalline fingers were warm, heated by the volcanic energy flowing through her body. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere, and neither is my planet, not for a few centuries at least. They rejoined Helen, who'd been tactfully giving them privacy while examining the crystal formations. Her bioluminescent patterns were carefully neutral, but Ben had learned to read the subtle variations. She'd nodded. Esther's interest and wasn't entirely pleased about it. The binary sunset was spectacular, twin stars sinking toward the horizon in different directions, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that made the entire landscape glow. The crystalline gardens reflected and refracted the light into impossible patterns, creating a moment of pure beauty. Thank you for coming, Esther said as they walked back toward the landing platform. For listening to our request, for considering helping us, for treating me as a person rather than just a diplomat. It means more than you know. Thank you for the honesty, Ben replied, and the information about Kraho culture. It's helpful to understand different perspectives. Esther's smile suggested she knew exactly why that information was helpful. Safe travels, Ben Tennyson. I hope we'll meet again soon. The shuttle ride back to Plumber headquarters was quiet for the first 10 minutes. Helen sat across from Ben, her expression thoughtful, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing in a slow rhythm that suggested she was processing something. Finally, she spoke. She's into you. Yeah, I noticed. And she basically gave you permission to date multiple people while also explaining why you should. Also noticed that. Helen's patterns flickered faster. Are you considering it? Her offer, I mean. The whole multiple partnerships thing. Ben met her eyes directly. I don't know. The Omnitrix warning about needing emotional anchors is real. The Kraho elders confirmed it. But I don't want to pursue relationships just because they're strategical. Why useful for preventing cosmic dissolution? That feels wrong. But what if you're interested in someone for personal reasons and it also happens to help with the anchor thing? Helen's voice was carefully neutral. Is that still wrong? Are we talking hypothetically, or are you asking about something specific? Helen's patterns blazed brighter, giving away her emotional state. Maybe both. Look, I'm not good at this kind of conversation. I'm better at racing and fighting and moving too fast to think about complicated emotional stuff. But, she paused, seeming to gather courage. But I've been thinking about you a lot since the null void. About how you scared me, then came back to yourself. About how you trusted me to have your back even in impossible situations. Ben's enhanced heartbeat accelerated, loud enough in his own ears that he wondered if Helen's kinesolaran hearing could detect it. I've been thinking about you too, he admitted. About how you didn't run when I transformed into that cosmic horror. About how you came back for me on the conquest even though it meant risking yourself. He trailed off, not sure how to articulate the feeling he got when Helen was close. That sense of being grounded and energized simultaneously. About how my bioluminescent patterns pulse brighter when you're around. Helen offered, a slight smirk crossing her features. Bako, say that's been embarrassingly obvious lately, and I'm pretty sure everyone's noticed. Is that what that means? I thought it was just a kinesolaran thing. I'm experiencing strong emotions about someone, thing. Helen's smirk faded into something more vulnerable. Look, I don't know what this is or what it should be. But I know I want to keep being around you, keep having your back, keep being one of the people who reminds you that you're Ben Tennyson and not just some cosmic entity. I want that too, Ben said. With you, and maybe with other people too, if I'm being completely honest. Which feels weird to say. But after what Esther explained about emotional anchors and different cultural models, you're realizing that maybe the human default of monogamy isn't your only option, Helen finished. Especially when you're not entirely human anymore and you literally need multiple strong connections to prevent existential dissolution. Yeah, that. Helen was quiet for a long moment, her patterns shifting through various colors. My mom's full kinesolaran, she said eventually. My dad's human. On her homeworld, the social structure is different than human society, they value speed bonds. Connections between people who can keep up with each other literally and metaphorically. Multiple speed bonds are normal. Common, even. So you grew up with two different cultural models for relationships. And I never quite fit either one. Too fast for human social structures, too slow for kinesolaran ones. Stuck between, like always. Helen's expression was rueful. But maybe had in between space is where you are too now. Not quite human, not quite alien, figuring out what works for who you've become. She leaned forward, closing the distance between them. So here's what I'm proposing. No formal commitment, no defining what this is, no pressure to figure everything out right now. Just, let's be honest with each other. About what we feel, what we want, what we're comfortable with. And we'll navigate the complicated stuff as it comes up. That sounds terrifyingly mature and reasonable, Ben said. I know, I'm as surprised as you are. But Helen was smiling now, genuine and warm. So are we doing this? Whatever this turns out to be. Yeah, Ben said, we're doing this. Helen moved faster than thought, closing the last bit of distance between them. Her lips met his, warm and electric. And her bioluminescent patterns exploded into cascading light that filled the shuttle's passenger compartment. The kiss lasted maybe 5 seconds of objective time, but to Helen's kinesiolarian perception, and to Ben's enhanced awareness, it stretched into something longer, something perfect and terrifying and exactly right. When they separated, Helen's patterns were blazy. So bright she was practically glowing. "Okay," she said, slightly breathless. "That was better than I expected." "Same," Ben managed, his own enhanced heartbeat racing. The shuttle's comm system chimed with an incoming message. Ben reluctantly pulled his attention from Helen's radiant form to check the notification. It was from Plumber Headquarters. "Urgent priority. There's been an attack," he read aloud. "Void Collective Forces struck a kinesiolarian racing championship on Connect. Multiple casualties. They're requesting immediate assistance from any available magisters." Helen's patterns FTED immediately from romantic glow to combat readiness. "Connect is my mother's homeworld. If they're attacking the championship, then your family might be there," Ben finished. "We're going now." He forwarded the message to the pilot with instructions to change course immediately. The shuttle banked hard, accelerating toward the nearest portal that could get them to Connect quickly. Helen's hand found his again, squeezing hard enough that he felt it even through his enhanced durability. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Always," Ben replied. "Whatever this is, it includes having each other's backs." "No question." The shuttle jumped to faster than light transit, racing toward Connect and whatever crisis awaited them there. Behind them, in the space they'd left, a Void Collective observer materialized briefly, watching, reporting back to its masters that the anchor was forming bonds exactly as predicted. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Blank, blank. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.